Welcome to Marketplace Africa. We cover the biggest economic trends impacting the continent. I'm Zain Asher. While the Ivory Coast is largely known for their cocoa, with exports of the bean valued at $3.25 billion in 2018, one commodity is quickly becoming known as the country's grey gold: cashews. In 2017, the country produced over 700,000 tons of the nut, which represented 23% of global production that year. Even amidst unprecedented disruptions in 2020, industry players are looking to continue this growth. Eleni Jokos takes a look.
As harvest began earlier this year in Côte d'Ivoire, farmers were hard at work. Suleiman Bamba is one of the country's 35,000 cashew producers. He picks the fruits freshly fallen from the trees, separating the valuable nut from the apple before setting it in the sun to dry. He began farming cashews 15 years ago with only 1 hectare of land. Today, Suleiman has 15 hectares of land on his farm, some 10 kilometers outside of the political capital of Yamoussoukro.
I got into cashew growing because it is a crop that allows me to earn a living. It is easy to grow and maintain, and thanks to the cashew nut, I can send my children to school and provide for my family.
Cashew farming is still relatively new to Côte d'Ivoire compared to other countries, but it has taken off fast, developing into the country's second largest export after cocoa. Bolstered by global demand and a price guarantee instituted by the government, cashew production doubled from 2010 to 2018, topping 760,000 tons and making up 23% of the global production of cashews in 2017, according to the World Bank.
It's the law of the market. It's thanks to the international demand. Before, 1 kilo of cashew was 25 francs, but now it's 400 francs. Before, it was a crop that you only find in the north of the country, but now everyone grows it.
But the road has not always been smooth. After years of rising prices, the cashew bubble burst in 2018. According to Abu Bakr, prices plummeted almost by half.
It is true that we went through a crisis in 2018, but as you know, in all commodities, there are ups and downs. The 2018 crisis was a very severe one, but we are emerging from the crisis with a more solid sector than before.
Prices stabilized soon after, but Côte d'Ivoire learned a critical lesson. To become less dependent on the fluctuating market prices, they need to start processing their own cashews. With loan support from the World Bank, the government has set an ambitious goal of processing half of the cashews it produces by 2023.
For the moment, the Ivory Coast is dependent on the export of raw cashew. But when you look at the big processing countries like Vietnam today, 30 years ago, these countries were also dependent on the export of raw nuts. I think it's a process.
Cashew processing is central to the country's mission of transforming the industry. Omais Nasir, the Director General of this factory, started his agriculture career with coffee and cocoa before switching to cashews for the government's incentives, like premiums for producing and processing cashews and tax exemptions for the equipment. Despite the government's support, he has faced obstacles in the newly established sector.
The processed Ivorian cashew nut is not really known on the international market. It's only in the past 2 years that people have started to take an interest in the Ivorian cashew and realize that there's actually cashew kernel in Africa. Historically, it's the Vietnamese and the Indians who process the cashew nut and sell it internationally. So in people's minds, they are the only ones who produce and sell it. For us to enter the market and sell our African cashew, it's difficult, yet it is a good quality nut.
In 2019, this factory processed 6,000 tons of cashews. This year, their goal was 8,000 tons, a number set before coronavirus took over the globe. In March, the entire industry was hit hard when supply chains shut down.
When the trade exportation started back to the flow of cashew nuts, export was very slow So that was very hard for cashew farmers because the prices decreased almost by twice.
Even as prices dropped, the expert we spoke to says international demand for cashews stayed steady throughout the pandemic.
The supply between balance and demand is quite well balanced indeed. So it's more an issue about the flow in the supply chain. That's an issue in terms of global supply and demand.
After yet another major disruption, cashew suppliers in the Ivory Coast remain determined to add value to their exports and hope these efforts can establish the country in the world market.
Coming up next.